My husband and his mother moved into the house my father left me and started redecorating without asking. When my MIL posted, "Finally living the life we deserve" on Facebook, I replied with the divorce papers. But let me back up. Dad died when I was 28, leaving me his century-old Victorian in the historic district. The house had been in our family for 4 generations. Every room held memories. The kitchen where my grandmother taught me to bake, the porch where Dad and I spent Sunday mornings drinking coffee. When I married Theo 2 years later, he seemed to understand what the house meant to me. He'd grown up in apartments, moving every few years. "I love that you have roots," he'd say. "Somewhere that's really yours." His mother, Darlene, had other ideas. It started subtly. She'd visit and suggest minor changes. "This wallpaper is so dated. These curtains block too much light." I'd smile politely and change the subject. Then Theo lost his job. His company downsized, and suddenly we were living on my salary alone. Darlene called daily, offering help we didn't need, advice we didn't ask for. "Theo should move back home until he finds work," she'd say. "This is his home," I'd remind her. 6 months into his unemployment, Theo started acting strange, taking calls in another room, disappearing for hours to clear his head. When I suggested marriage counseling, he accused me of not supporting him during a difficult time. I came home early from work one Tuesday and found them. Darlene's car in the driveway, her suitcases in my foyer. Theo was removing my grandmother's china from the cabinet. "What's happening?" I asked. Darlene appeared from the kitchen, measuring tape in hand. "We're just making some improvements. This house has so much potential. Mom's staying with us for a while," Theo added quickly, "just until she finds a new place." Something in his voice told me this wasn't temporary. Over the next week, I watched my house transform. My grandmother's furniture appeared on Craigslist. The wallpaper Dad had helped me choose was stripped away. Darlene hired contractors without asking, charging everything to my credit card. When I objected, Theo said I was being selfish. "She's my mother. She has nowhere else to go. This is my house," I said quietly. "Ours," he corrected. "We're married." But we weren't. Not really. Missouri is not a community property state, and I'd never added his name to the deed. The Facebook post appeared on a Sunday morning. Darlene had taken professional photos throughout my house, now staged with her furniture, her style, her vision. The caption, "Finally living the life we deserve. Blessed, new beginnings, my home." I sat in my car outside the house I'd grown up in, staring at those photos. Then I called my attorney. The divorce papers were filed by Monday afternoon. I printed them and posted a photo as a comment on Darlene's Facebook post. "Here's the life you actually deserve." The sheriff served them Tuesday morning. I waited outside while Theo and Darlene read through the paperwork. The eviction notice was stapled to the back. When they emerged, Darlene's face was purple with rage. "You can't do this," she hissed. "Theo has rights." "Actually," I said calmly, "he doesn't. The house is solely in my name. You have 30 days. But as I drove away, my phone buzzed. A text from my attorney. "We have a problem. Check the county recorder's office. Now." I pulled over and accessed the public records database. My heart stopped. Somehow, impossibly, a quitclaim deed had been filed 3 months ago, transferring my house into Theo and Darlene's names. The signature looked exactly like mine, but I'd never signed anything. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the document on my phone screen. The signature was perfect, too perfect. Every loop of my handwriting, every characteristic slant. Someone had studied how I wrote. My hands shook as I called my attorney back. "It's forged," I said immediately. "Can you prove that?" Patricia asked. Her voice was careful, measured. She'd been Dad's attorney before mine, had handled his estate. She knew what this house meant. "I never signed this. I'd never sign this." "That's not the same as proof," she said gently. "Do you have any documents from that time period? Anything dated around when this was supposedly signed?" I pulled up my calendar. 3 months ago, March 15th. I'd been at a nursing conference in Kansas City that entire week. "I wasn't even in town," I said. "I was at a conference. I can prove it." "Good. That's a start. Meet me at my office in an hour and bring everything you have." I drove to my friend Whitney's apartment instead. She'd been my college roommate, the one person who knew everything about my relationship with Theo, the one who'd warned me about Darlene from the beginning. She opened the door in scrubs, just home from her shift at the hospital. "I need to see everything," I said before she could speak. "Every photo I was tagged in during March. Every text message. I need a timeline." Whitney pulled me inside. "What happened?" I told her about the deed while she made coffee. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. When I finished, she was already on her phone. "March 15th, she said. "That was the Saturday of the Kansas City conference. We got dinner at that Italian place. I took photos." She scrolled through her camera roll. "Here, time stamped. You're clearly not in Springfield signing documents." But even as relief flickered, reality set in. Being out of town didn't prove the signature was forged. It just proved I wasn't physically present. Theo could argue I'd signed it before I left, or after I returned. "I need to figure out how they did this," I said. "When they planned it. There has to be evidence." Patricia's office was in an old brick building downtown, 3 blocks from the courthouse. She had the quitclaim deed printed out when I arrived, spread across her massive oak desk. "Walk me through your marriage," she said. "Every financial entanglement, every document you've signed, everything." For 2 hours I talked. She took notes, asked pointed questions, made me remember details I'd buried. "Did Theo ever have access to your personal documents?" she asked. "Of course, we were married. They were in the filing cabinet in the office." "Birth certificate? Social security card?" I nodded slowly, understanding where she was going. "He could have practiced my signature," I said. "He had years to perfect it." "Let's assume for a moment the signature is forged," Patricia said. "That's fraud, criminal fraud. But here's what concerns me. The deed was notarized." She pointed to the stamp at the bottom. "A notary public seal. dated March 15th. Either you were there and you don't remember, she said carefully, or someone notarized a forged document. That's a felony. I need to talk to this notary. I'll file a motion to invalidate the deed, Patricia said. But you need to understand, this could take months, years even, and in the meantime, that deed stands. Legally, right now, Theo and Darlene own your house. The notary's name was Beverly Hutchins. Her office was inside a pack and ship store on the south side of town. I found her behind the counter, sorting packages. I need to ask you about a document you notarized, I said, placing a copy of the quitclaim deed on the counter. She pulled on reading glasses and studied it. March 15th, she said. I remember this one. Woman came in, needed it done quickly, paid cash. My stomach dropped. What did she look like? Beverly squinted, thinking. Older lady, well-dressed, expensive purse. She had the document already filled out, just needed the seal. Did you check her ID? Of course. Beverly looked offended. I'm a certified notary. I always check identification. What name was on the ID? She pointed to my signature on the document. My name. Can you describe her in more detail? I asked, pulling up my phone. I found a photo of Darlene from Facebook. Was this her? Beverly studied the photo for a long moment. Could have been. Maybe. It was 3 months ago. But you're not sure. I see a lot of people, she said defensively. I thanked her and left. In my car, I called Patricia. The notary says someone else signed it. An older woman who presented ID in my name. That's identity theft, Patricia said. We need to file a police report. Today. The Springfield Police Department's fraud division consisted of 2 detectives in a cramped office on the 2nd floor. Detective Raymond Cruz listened to my story with the tired expression of someone who'd heard it all before. How much is the house worth? He asked. Around $400,000, maybe more. He sat up straighter. Property fraud over $100,000 was a felony in Missouri. I'll need copies of everything, he said. The original deed, the forged deed, your proof you were out of town. I'll start with the notary, see if we can get a better description or if she has security footage. What about Theo and Darlene? Can you question them? Eventually. But I need to build a case first. If I go at them too soon and they lawyer up, this gets harder. I wanted immediate justice. I wanted them arrested, handcuffed, perp-walked in front of news cameras. But Detective Cruz was right. We needed evidence they couldn't deny. How long will this take? I asked. Depends. Could be weeks, could be months. I'm supposed to let them live in my house for months while you investigate? You could stay with a friend, he suggested. Or, it's my house. He gave me a look that said he'd heard that before too. That legal ownership was complicated. That possession was 9/10 of the law. I left the police station and drove to the house. My house. My grandmother's house. My father's house. Mine. Darlene's car was in the driveway. Through the front windows, I could see her hanging new curtains in the living room. I walked up the porch steps Dad and I had repainted 2 summers before he died. Unlocked the door with the key since I was 6. Darlene jumped when she saw me. You can't just walk in here, she said. It's my house. Not according to the county recorder. She held up her phone. The same document discovered. You signed it over to us. It's legal. I never signed anything. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd already won. Prove it. That's when I saw them. Boxes stacked in the corner of the living room. My boxes. The ones I'd packed with my grandmother's china, my mother's books, Dad's photo albums. What are you doing with my things? We're streamlining, Darlene said. The house was so cluttered. All these old things nobody wants anymore. I moved toward the boxes, but she stepped between us. You should leave, she said, before I call the police and report you for trespassing. Something in me snapped. Call them, I said. Please. I'd love to explain to the officers how you forged my signature and committed identity theft. Her smile faltered, just for a second, but I saw it. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. The notary remembers you. She described you. An older woman with an expensive purse who paid cash. Darlene's face went carefully blank. That could be anyone. She's looking at security footage right now, I lied. It's only a matter of time. I grabbed the nearest box and walked out before she could respond. I didn't have security footage. I didn't even know if the pack and ship store had cameras. But the fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She'd done it. And now she knew I could prove it. Back at Whitney's apartment, I opened the box I'd grabbed. Inside were my grandmother's photo albums, the leather ones she'd maintained obsessively. Every family Christmas, every birthday, every mundane Tuesday afternoon meticulously documented and labeled. I flipped through pages of my childhood, my parents' wedding, my grandmother as a young woman standing in front of the Victorian, pregnant with my father. At the bottom of the box was something I'd forgotten about, a shoebox full of letters. They were addressed to my grandmother, sent from a lawyer's office in 1985. I opened the first one and started reading. My grandmother had fought a property dispute. Her brother had tried to claim the Victorian after their parents died, arguing that as the eldest son, the house should pass to him. My grandmother had hired an attorney, and won. The letters documented everything. Forged documents, false claims, a judge's ruling that the house was rightfully hers. History repeating itself. The same house, the same fight. I photographed every letter and sent them to Patricia with a message. My grandmother dealt with this exact thing. The house stays in the family, no matter what. Her response came immediately. This is good. Shows pattern of family protecting the property. Establishes your emotional attachment as legitimate. Keep digging, keep digging. I could do that. I started with Theo's phone records. We were still married, still on the same family plan. I logged into the account and downloaded 3 months of data. In the weeks leading up to March 15th, there were dozens of calls between Theo and his mother, but there was another number that appeared repeatedly. I ran it through a reverse lookup. The number belonged to a print shop in Branson, 2 hours south, the same print shop that specialized in custom documents and reproduction services. I drove to Branson the next morning. The print shop was tucked between a fudge store and a tourist trap selling hillbilly memorabilia. Inside, a teenage kid worked the counter, looking bored. "I need to ask about a job you did," I said. "About 3 months ago, someone would have come in needing a custom document printed." He shrugged. "We do that all the time." This would have been a legal document. A deed, high-quality paper, specific formatting. "You need to talk to the owner," he said. "But he's not here." "When will he be back?" "Tomorrow, maybe." I left my number and drove back to Springfield. I was halfway home when Whitney called. "Someone's at the house," she said. "I drove by to check on it like you asked. There's a moving truck in the driveway." I made an illegal U-turn and drove 90 miles an hour back to town. The moving truck was massive, the kind used for long-distance relocations. 2 men were carrying my grandmother's settee down the front steps. "Stop," I yelled, running toward them. "You can't take that." The movers looked confused. One of them checked his clipboard. "We have authorization from the homeowner," he said. "Everything in the living room and master bedroom goes to storage. I'm the homeowner." He showed me the work order, Darlene's signature, an address for a storage facility in Kansas City. "She doesn't own this house," I said. "She forged documents." The mover looked uncomfortable. "Lady, we don't get involved in domestic disputes. We just move furniture. You need to work this out with whoever hired us." I called Patricia. She called the moving company's headquarters. 20 minutes later, the truck pulled away empty, but the damage was done. Darlene was trying to strip the house before I could stop her. That night, I changed all the locks. I hired a security company to install cameras. I moved into my childhood bedroom and didn't sleep. At 3 in the morning, someone tried the back door. The security alarm shrieked. By the time I got downstairs with a baseball bat, they were gone, but I found something wedged under the door. A notice from an attorney I didn't recognize. "Cease and desist. You are illegally occupying property that belongs to Theodore Chapman and Darlene Chapman. Vacate within 48 hours or face forcible removal." I photographed it and sent it to Patricia. Her response: "They're trying to scare you. Don't leave. I'll handle this." The print shop owner called me back 2 days later. His name was Glenn, and he sounded nervous. "I remember the job," he said. "Woman came in with a template, wanted aged paper, specific fonts, paid extra for rush service." "Did she say what it was for?" "She said it was for a surprise gift. Her son was buying his wife property, wanted the deed to look antique, like a family heirloom." "Did you think that was strange?" "People ask for weird stuff all the time. It's not my job to judge." "I need you to testify," I said. "This woman committed fraud. She used that document to steal my house." Long silence. "I can't get involved in that," he said. "I could lose my business. She forged a legal document. That's a felony. Take it up with the police," he said, and hung up. But I had enough. I sent everything to Detective Cruz. The phone records, the print shop information, the notary's statement, the timeline proving I was out of town. "This is good work," he said when I met him at his office. "Better than what most of my investigators would have done. We can bring them in for questioning." "When?" "Give me a week to coordinate with the prosecutor's office. We want to make sure the charges stick." A week. I could manage a week. Except Theo was apparently done waiting. I came home from work to find the front door open. The new locks had been drilled out. Inside, the house was trashed. Every drawer dumped. Every closet emptied. My grandmother's china lay shattered on the kitchen floor, and on the wall above the fireplace spray-painted in red. "Squatter." I called Detective Cruz. He came himself, brought a crime scene tech. They photographed everything, dusted for prints. "This is escalating," he said. "You should stay somewhere else." "This is my house," I said for the 100th time. "I understand. But these people are getting desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things." That night, I stayed at Whitney's. I couldn't look at the destruction anymore. Couldn't stand in the ruins of my grandmother's legacy. Whitney made tea and sat with me on her couch. "Tell me about your dad," she said. "Tell me about the house." So I did. I told her about learning to ride a bike on that driveway, about hiding in the attic during thunderstorms, about the summer I spent repainting all the trim with Dad, just the 2 of us, talking about everything and nothing. "He left it to you because he knew you'd protect it," Whitney said. "Not just the building, the memories, the history. I'm not doing a very good job. You're still fighting," she said. "That's what matters." The prosecutor's office called the next morning. They wanted to meet. Assistant District Attorney Chen was younger than I expected, sharp-eyed and serious. She had my case file spread across her desk. "Detective Cruz has done excellent work here," she said. "We have enough to charge both Theodore and Darlene Chapman with forgery, fraud, and identity theft. The question is whether we can prove it in court. What do you need?" "The notary is weak. She can't definitively identify Darlene. The print shop owner won't cooperate. We need something more concrete, something that shows intent and planning." "I have phone records," I said. "Dozens of calls between them before the forgery. That shows they talked, not what they talked about." I thought about the moving truck, the destroyed locks, the spray paint. "They're panicking," I said. "People who are panicking make mistakes." Chen studied me. "What are you thinking?" "Give me a few days. I might be able to get you what you need." "I can't officially condone anything illegal," she said carefully. "I understand." I spent the weekend at the house, repairing what I could, installing stronger locks, setting up more cameras, waiting. On Monday, Darlene showed up with a locksmith. I watched from an upstairs window as she tried to get him to drill out my new locks. He refused when I appeared on the porch with my phone, recording everything. "Ma'am, if there's a dispute about ownership, I can't help you," he said to Darlene. "You need to go through the courts." She paid him anyway, and he left. She stood on my lawn, staring up at the house. "This is my home now," she called out. "You can't keep me out forever." "Try me," I said. That night, someone cut the power line to the house. Not enough to be dangerous, just enough to be inconvenient. The security company had backup batteries, but the message was clear. I called my uncle, Dad's brother. He was a retired electrician who'd helped wire the house when I was a kid. You need help? He asked. I need to make this place a fortress, I said. He showed up the next morning with his tools and 2 of his sons. By evening, the house had motion sensors, reinforced door frames, and a backup generator. Your dad would be proud, my uncle said. Fighting for what's yours. Think I'm crazy? I think you're a Chapman. We don't give up. Patricia filed a motion for emergency injunctive relief, asking the court to void the quitclaim deed pending the criminal investigation. The hearing was set for Friday. I showed up in the navy dress I'd worn to Dad's funeral. Patricia was already there, organizing documents. On the other side of the courtroom, Theo and Darlene sat with their attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked bored. Judge Alicia Morrison took the bench. She was in her 60s, known for being fair but tough. I've reviewed the filings, she said. Ms. Patterson, you're asking me to void a legally recorded deed based on allegations of forgery. Yes, Your Honor. My client has substantial evidence that her signature was forged and that the notarization was fraudulent. The judge turned to Theo's attorney. Mr. Reynolds, your response? He stood, confident. Your Honor, this is a desperate attempt by Mrs. Chapman to renege on a voluntary transfer. She's having second thoughts about her generosity and is now making false accusations. The deed was properly signed, witnessed, and recorded. My client was out of state when this deed was allegedly signed, Patricia said. We have receipts, photographs, and witness testimony placing her in Kansas City. The deed is dated March 15th, Reynolds said smoothly. It doesn't specify what time it was signed. Mrs. Chapman could have signed it before she left for her conference, or after she returned. Judge Morrison looked at me. Mrs. Chapman, did you sign this deed? I stood. No, Your Honor. I never signed that document. I would never give away my family's home. Yet you're still married to Mr. Chapman, Reynolds interjected. You lived together in this house. You shared financial accounts. Is it really so unbelievable that you signed a deed benefiting your husband? I never signed it, I repeated. The judge studied the documents for a long moment. Here's what I'm going to do, she said finally. I'm ordering a forensic handwriting analysis. Both parties will submit known samples of Mrs. Chapman's signature. We'll have an expert compare them to the signature on this deed. Until that analysis is complete, the status quo remains. Mr. and Mrs. Chapman and his mother may not alter, sell, or further encumber the property. Mrs. Chapman, you may continue to reside there. We'll reconvene in 30 days. It was something. Not a victory, but not a loss. 30 days to prove the forgery. Outside the courthouse, Theo tried to approach me. I kept walking. We need to talk, he called after me. Talk to my attorney. This is getting out of hand. Mom didn't mean for things to go this far. I stopped and turned to face him. This man I'd married. This man who'd watched his mother destroy my home and said nothing. How long were you planning this? I asked. It's not like that. How long, Theo? He looked away. That was answer enough. Before we got married? I pressed. Before my father died? How long have you been lying to me? She's my mother, he said quietly. She needed help. The house was just sitting there. The house was mine. You have so much, he said. She has nothing. I thought we could share it. I thought you'd understand. You thought I'd be okay with fraud? It wasn't supposed to be fraud. We were going to tell you eventually. Make it official. But then you started acting suspicious, and Mom said, Your mother said what? He went quiet. Theo, what did your mother say? That we couldn't trust you. That you'd take everything in the divorce. That we needed to protect ourselves. By stealing my house. By securing our future, he said. Our family's future. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. There is no hour anymore, I said. You made sure of that. The handwriting analyst was a woman named Dr. Regina Walsh. She testified in dozens of cases, had credentials longer than my arm. Patricia scheduled me to meet with her 3 days after the hearing. Her office was in Clayton, in one of those renovated industrial buildings full of expensive consultants. Dr. Walsh was precise and methodical, examining my hands before I wrote anything. I need to see how you naturally hold a pen, she explained. Your pressure points, the angle of your writing. Everyone has unique characteristics. For an hour, I wrote my name, full sentences, quick signatures, and careful ones. She photographed everything, made notes in a leather journal. Now, she said, tell me about this deed. I explained the timeline, the notary, my suspicions about Darlene. Do you think Theo practiced your signature? She asked. They were married, I said. He saw me sign things constantly. He had access to documents with my real signature. He could have traced them, practiced them. Forgery takes time, Dr. Walsh said. Even someone familiar with your handwriting needs practice. The pressure points are wrong. The hesitation marks show up under magnification. We'll catch it if it's there. And if you can't tell, then the court will have to decide based on other evidence. Not the reassurance I wanted. I spent the waiting period working double shifts at the hospital where I was a surgical nurse. Anything to avoid the house, avoid thinking about 30 days from now when Judge Morrison would make her ruling. Whitney kept me sane. She'd check on the house daily, text me photos showing everything was still intact. She'd bring me dinner during my breaks, force me to eat when all I wanted was to sleep. You're going to win this, she'd say. You don't know that. I know you. You don't lose fights that matter. 3 weeks in, Detective Cruz called. We found something, he said. Can you come to the station? He was waiting in an interview room with Ada Chen. On the table between them was a laptop. We executed a search warrant on Theo's electronics, Chen said. Found some interesting files. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a folder labeled Project Homestead. Inside were documents, practice signatures, hundreds of them, my name written over and over in Theo's handwriting, gradually getting closer to my natural signature. Scanned copies of my birth certificate and driver's license, screenshots of the quitclaim deed form before it was filled out, and emails. So many emails between Theo and Darlene. Read this one, Cruz said, pointing. From Darlene Chapman to Theodore Chapman. Date, February 3rd. Subject, the plan I've been researching. The house is worth more than she told you. We could sell it, split the proceeds. You'd have enough to start your own business. I could finally retire. She won't even know until it's too late. She's so trusting, so naive. This is what she gets for making us live in her family home like we're guests instead of family. I felt sick. There's more, Chen said. She opened another email. From Theodore Chapman to Darlene Chapman. Date, March 1st. Subject, timeline. I found a notary who doesn't ask too many questions. She works at that pack and ship place. You'll need to go when she's working alone. I'm getting the fake ID made this week. The guy in Branson said it'll pass inspection as long as she doesn't look too closely. Practice the signature a few more times. It needs to be perfect. That's confession, I said. That's intent to commit fraud, Chen corrected. With documentation showing premeditation, Judge Morrison is going to see all of this at the next hearing, and we filed additional criminal charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and now we're adding attempted grand theft. Will they go to prison? If convicted? Yes. Darlene will definitely see jail time. Theo might get a deal if he cooperates. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. What about the house? I asked. With this evidence, the deed will be voided. You'll get full ownership back. How long? Judge Morrison moved the hearing up. Tomorrow at 10. This time the courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the case. Local reporters sat in the back row, notebooks ready. Theo and Darlene looked smaller somehow, deflated. Their expensive attorney kept whispering to them urgently. Judge Morrison took the bench. She didn't look happy. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the prosecution, she said. Mr. Reynolds, have you seen these documents? We have, Your Honor. Your clients are facing serious criminal charges, the judge interrupted. This hearing is about the civil matter of property ownership. Based on the evidence before me, I'm ruling that the quitclaim deed dated March 15th is void ab initio, void from the beginning. It was procured through fraud and forgery. Full ownership of the property reverts to Mrs. Chapman. I felt Whitney grab my hand. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm ordering Mr. Theodore Chapman and Mrs. Darlene Chapman to vacate the property within 72 hours. Any belongings they introduce to the property must be removed. Any damage must be documented and will be addressed in the divorce proceedings. Reynolds stood. Your Honor, with respect. I'm not finished, Judge Morrison said coldly. I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of schemes, a lot of people trying to game the system, but stealing someone's family home through identity theft and forgery, that's particularly cruel. Mrs. Chapman, she looked at me. I'm sorry you had to go through this. The court finds your claim entirely credible and sympathizes with your situation. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. The reporters rushed forward as we left the courtroom. Patricia fielded their questions while I just kept walking. Outside, the spring sunshine felt surreal after months of darkness. You won, Whitney said, hugging me. I got my house back, I corrected. I lost my marriage, my trust. 2 years of my life. You lost dead weight, she said. Now you get to rebuild. The 72 hours felt like 72 years. I watched from Whitney's apartment as movers emptied Darlene's furniture from the house. Theo came and went, his car loaded with boxes. He never looked up at the windows. On the third day, I returned. The house was empty except for the furniture that had always been there. My grandmother's things, my father's collections. The walls were bare where Darlene had removed her photos and artwork, but it was mine again. I spent that first night alone in my childhood bedroom, listening to the old house settle around me. The familiar creaks and groans that had terrified me as a child now felt like a lullaby. The criminal trial happened 8 months later. I testified about the forgery, the timeline, the emotional devastation of watching my home be stolen. Dr. Walsh testified about the handwriting analysis, how the signature showed clear signs of being traced and practiced, how the pressure points were wrong. The emails were the clincher. Theo had tried to claim he'd been coerced by his mother, but his own words condemned him. Darlene was convicted on all charges. She got 3 years in prison and restitution payments that would take her the rest of her life to complete. Theo took a plea deal, 18 months and supervised probation. He had to testify against his mother, which I heard broke their relationship completely. I didn't attend his sentencing. I was already gone by then. Moved on didn't feel like the right phrase. I'd never really been present in the marriage. I'd been auditioning for the role of Theo's wife, trying to fit myself into his story. Now I was writing my own. I renovated the house slowly, carefully, restored the wallpaper in the dining room to match the pattern from my grandmother's time, refinished the hardwood floors Dad and I had walked on together, painted my childhood bedroom a color I actually liked instead of the pale pink it had always been. Whitney moved in 6 months after the trial. She was going through her own divorce and needed somewhere safe to land. We turned the house into something new, still full of history, but now making new memories. The divorce was finalized a year after that Facebook post. I kept my father's last name, the name connected to the house, to my real family. Theo became a stranger I used to know. Sometimes late at night, I'd stand on the front porch and think about everything that happened, how close I came to losing this place, how Theo had looked at my family legacy and seen dollar signs. But mostly, I thought about my grandmother fighting her brother for this house, my father working 2 jobs to maintain it, the generations of women who'd stood on this same porch and decided they were worth fighting for. I joined their ranks. I was worthy of being a Chapman. The story should end there. Triumphant, resolved, me standing strong in my reclaimed home. But life is rarely that neat. 2 years after the trial, I got a letter. Not from Theo, from his sister Amanda. We'd been friendly during the marriage. though she'd disappeared when the divorce started. The letter was short. I need to tell you something about what Theo and Mom did. It's worse than you know. Call me. I almost threw it away. I'd built something good in the aftermath. I was seeing someone new, a teacher named James who loved old houses and made me laugh. The idea of reopening old wounds felt masochistic, but I called. Amanda met me at a coffee shop downtown. She'd lost weight, looked older than her 35 years. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I wasn't sure you would. Your letter was cryptic enough to make me curious. She stirred her coffee for a long moment before speaking. Theo and Mom didn't just target you. They've done this before. I set down my cup. What do you mean? Theo's first wife, Renee. She inherited a house from her grandmother, a farmhouse outside Sedalia. They were married for 3 years. He never mentioned a first wife. Of course he didn't. They got divorced about 6 months before he met you. Mom helped him hide all the records during your relationship. Amanda pulled out a folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, court documents, photos. Renee's grandmother left her 50 acres with a main house. Theo convinced her to add his name to the deed after they got married. Then he took out loans against the property without telling her. When she found out, he'd already pocketed $200,000. I felt cold despite the warm coffee shop. She fought him in divorce court. But by then, the house was so underwater with debt that they had to sell it. She got almost nothing, lost her family's farm. And Darlene was part of it? Mom encouraged the whole thing. She was living with them too, just like with you. She'd pushed Theo to take out more loans, to leverage the property. Renee tried to press charges, but the loans were technically legal. He'd forged her signature on the documents. How many times? I asked. How many women? Amanda looked away. There was another one before Renee. I didn't know her well. Theo was younger, early 20s. Her name was Corinne. She had a small house in Colombia from her parents. I don't know all the details, but she disappeared from his life suddenly. I asked Mom about it once, and she told me to mind my business. 3 women, possibly 3 families' legacies stolen. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because Theo got out early. Good behavior. And Mom's filing appeals. Their attorney thinks he can get her conviction overturned on a technicality. If they succeed, she trailed off. They'll do it again, she nodded. I can't prove anything about the other women, but you have documentation. Your case was prosecuted. If Renee and Corinne came forward with their stories, it would show a pattern. It might help keep Mom in prison, and it might help those women get some kind of justice. I spent the next week finding them. Renee was living in an apartment in Jefferson City, working as a bank teller. When I called and explained who I was, she went quiet. I thought I was the only one, she said finally. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I'd been stupid for trusting him. You weren't stupid. They're predators. We met for lunch. She brought her own folder of documents, the forged loan papers, photos of the farmhouse before and after, emails from Theo that now looked like manipulation manuals. The worst part, she said, was knowing that house had been in my family since 1890. My great-great-grandmother homesteaded that land, raised 9 children there, survived the Depression, and I lost it because I fell in love with the wrong person. Finding Corinne was harder. She'd moved out of state, changed her name, but Amanda had kept in touch sporadically over the years and finally got me her contact information. Corinne was in Oregon now, working as a therapist specializing in financial abuse. When I explained why I was calling, she laughed bitterly. Of course Theo's still doing it. Predators don't change. They just find new victims. Her story was similar, but earlier, cruder. Theo had been younger, less sophisticated. He'd convinced her to take out a home equity loan to fund his business idea. The business failed. He left her with $60,000 in debt on a house worth $70,000. I had to sell, she said. My parents had bought that house for me as a college graduation present. They were so disappointed. Not in me, they said, but I knew. I knew they thought I'd been careless. Have you ever thought about pressing charges? I asked. That was 15 years ago. I don't have evidence anymore. I was young and stupid and threw everything away when the divorce was final. I just wanted to forget. What if I told you there are at least 2 other women, that we have evidence, that together we might be able to show a pattern? Long silence. I'd want to know more, she said. We built a case. 3 women, spanning 15 years, all losing family properties to the same man and his mother. Patricia helped me connect with Renee's and Corinne's attorneys. We compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Ada Chen reviewed it with her supervisor. This changes things, she said. Darlene's appeal was scheduled for next month. With this new evidence, we can argue that she's a serial fraudster, that her original sentence was appropriate. What about Theo? I asked. He's already served his sentence. Double jeopardy prevents us from trying him again for the same crime. But this could affect his probation, possibly send him back to finish his original sentence if we can show he violated the terms. The appeal hearing was different from the original trial. More formal, more attorneys. The judge was older, severe, someone who'd seen everything. Darlene sat in her prison jumpsuit, looking smaller than I remembered. She'd aged in prison, her confident polish stripped away. Her attorney argued technicalities, improper evidence handling, prejudicial statements from the original judge. It was all procedure, no substance. Then Chen stood. Your Honor, the state would like to present new evidence. Evidence that shows this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a decades-long pattern of fraud and manipulation. She introduced Renee and Corinne's testimony. The judge allowed them to speak via video conference. Renee went first. She described the farmhouse, her grandmother, the slow realization that Theo was stealing from her, the shame of losing her family's legacy. Corinne followed. Her voice was steady, professional from years of therapy training, but I heard the pain underneath, the wound that never quite healed. When they finished, the judge looked at Darlene. Do you have anything to say? Darlene stood. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Might show some recognition of the harm she'd caused. These women are lying, she said. They're bitter about their divorces. They're trying to destroy my family. The judge's expression didn't change. I've reviewed the evidence, the loan documents, the property records, the pattern of behavior. Mrs. Chapman, you've spent 2 decades helping your son steal from vulnerable women. You targeted women who'd inherited property, women who were already dealing with loss. You exploited their grief and manipulated them into trusting your son. I was just helping my child. You were committing crimes, the judge interrupted. Appeal denied. Your original sentence stands. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the parole board consider this new evidence when you're up for early release, which, given the scope of your criminal activity, I hope is never. Outside the courthouse, Renee hugged me. Corinne had flown in for the hearing, and the 3 of us stood together in the afternoon sun. Thank you, Renee said, for finding us, for making me feel like I wasn't alone. We should stay in touch, Corinne suggested. Maybe form some kind of support group for women who've been through financial abuse. We exchanged numbers, made plans to meet again, formed a bond built on shared trauma and survival. That night, I stood on my porch again. My house, my grandmother's house, still standing, still mine. James joined me, handed me a glass of wine. You okay? He asked. I think I am. Big day. Bigger than I expected, I said. I thought this was just about me and Theo, but it was so much larger. You helped those women. They helped me understand it wasn't personal. Theo didn't target me because of some failing of mine. I was just next. James pulled me close. He smelled like sawdust and coffee, familiar and safe. Your grandmother would be proud, he said. I thought about her fighting her brother for this house, standing firm when everyone told her to compromise, winning because she refused to give up. Yeah, I said. I think she would be. The divorce support group became real. We met monthly, eventually expanding to include other women who'd experienced financial abuse. Some had lost properties. Others had been trapped by debt. All of them needed somewhere to tell their stories without judgment. I shared the house for these meetings. We'd sit in my grandmother's living room, drinking tea from her china, talking about healing and justice and reclaiming our lives. One evening, a new woman joined us. She was young, maybe 25, clutching a folder of documents. My boyfriend convinced me to put his name on my condo, she said. The one my parents helped me buy. Now he's threatening to force a sale. I don't know what to do. We helped her, connected her with Patricia, walked her through the process of protecting her assets. She left with hope instead of fear. This is good work, Renee said after the meeting, helping people before they lose everything. Wish someone had helped me, I said. You're helping them now. That's what matters. I thought about Theo sometimes, wondered if he understood what he'd done, if he ever felt remorse. Amanda told me he'd moved to Florida, was working in his father-in-law's business, had gotten remarried to someone without property, without inheritance. Maybe he'd learned. Maybe he'd just gotten more careful. Darlene sent letters from prison occasionally. They always followed the same pattern. Denials, justifications, demands that I recant my testimony. I burned them without reading past the first line. 2 years later, James and I got married. Small ceremony in the backyard of the house. Whitney was my maid of honor. Renee and Corinne came, along with a dozen other women from our support group. We didn't just celebrate a wedding. We celebrated survival, victory, the stubborn refusal to let predators win. My uncle walked me down the aisle, through the house my father had left me, past the walls that held generations of memories. James waited by the garden where my grandmother had grown roses. The vows we wrote weren't traditional. We talked about partnership, not ownership. About building something together instead of one person subsume another. About respecting each other's legacies. After we signed the marriage license, Patricia handed me another document. What's this? I asked. A postnuptial agreement. James insisted on it. I looked at my new husband, confused. The house is yours, he said simply. Your history. Your family's legacy. I'm not here to take that. I'm here to help you protect it. That's when I knew I'd married the right person. We spent our honeymoon renovating the attic, turned it into a library with built-in shelves for all my grandmother's books, added a reading nook where the afternoon sun came through the original stained glass window. We're making new memories, James said, measuring for shelves. While honoring the old ones, I added. It felt right, building on what came before without erasing it. 5 years after the divorce, Theo died. Amanda called to tell me. Car accident, sudden, no one's fault. He was 39. I felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, not vindication, just nothing. There's something else, Amanda said hesitantly. In his things there was a box, letters he'd written but never sent. One was addressed to you. I don't want it. I understand, but I thought you should know it exists. If you ever change your mind. I thought about it for days. What could Theo possibly have to say after everything? What explanation or apology could matter now? Finally, curiosity won. Amanda brought the letter. I made her stay while I read it, needing a witness. The letter was short. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I took from you. Not just a house, not just property. I took your ability to trust, your sense of safety, the legacy your father left you. Mom spent years teaching me that people with money didn't deserve it unless they were willing to fight for it. That your security was my opportunity. That inheritance was just another form of privilege that should be redistributed. I believed her. I still half believe her. But I also understand now that what we did was evil, calculated and cruel. You were never going to give me that house. Why would you? It wasn't mine, so we took it. And in doing so, we destroyed everything good between us. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. I see it clearly now, and I'm sorry. I folded the letter and handed it back to Amanda. Burn it, I said. Are you sure? He's dead. His apology doesn't change anything, doesn't undo anything. I don't need to carry his guilt too. She took the letter and left. I never asked what she did with it. That night, I told James about the letter over dinner. How do you feel? He asked. Like closing a chapter I didn't know was still open. Good. He said he was sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't give back what was stolen. Sorry is just words. James reached across the table, took my hand. You've built something better, he said. This house is still standing. You're still standing. That's worth more than his apology. He was right. The house stands. The legacy continues. And I'm here, telling this story so that other women know they can fight back too. Because that's what we do. We survive. We rebuild. We protect what matters. And we never, ever give up what's rightfully ours. 10 years later, I'm still in the house. James and I have 2 daughters, Nora and Beatrice, named after my grandmother and great-grandmother. They play in the same rooms I played in, climb the same trees, learn to bake in the same kitchen. I tell them stories about their great-grandfather, about the house's history, about standing firm when people try to take what's yours. Will it be mine someday? Nora asks. She's 8. Serious, always thinking ahead. If you want it, I say. If you promise to protect it. From what? From anyone who sees it as just a house. Just property. This is family, history, love. People who don't understand that will always try to reduce it to something they can own. She thinks about this. Like Dad's mean brother? Not exactly, I say, though she's close. But yes, some people see value and think that means it should belong to them. That's dumb, Beatrice says. She's 5, fierce, never afraid to speak her mind. Yes, I agree. It is dumb, but it's also dangerous. The support group still meets monthly. We've helped over 50 women navigate financial abuse, property theft, and manipulative relationships. Patricia volunteers her time now, offers free consultations to anyone who needs them. Renee got remarried and bought a small farm outside Columbia. Not the same land her family lost, but her own legacy built from scratch. She invited me to visit, showed me the garden she'd planted, the animals she was raising. I thought I'd never feel safe in a house again, she told me. But I built this. It's mine because I made it, not because someone left it to me. That feels good. Corinne expanded her therapy practice, specializing in recovery from financial abuse. She speaks at conferences, writes articles, helps train other therapists. You changed my life, she told me once. Not just by stopping them, but by showing me that my story mattered, that I wasn't alone. We're not alone. That's the lesson I've learned. My story isn't unique. Houses get stolen, legacies get erased. Predators target vulnerable women who've just lost parents, who are grieving and trying to navigate new responsibilities. But we're fighting back, sharing strategies, building networks of support and protection. The house will pass to my daughters someday, and I'll make sure they know its full history. Not just the happy memories, but the fight to keep it. The lessons learned through betrayal and survival, because that's part of the legacy too. Not just the physical structure, but the resilience. The refusal to give up. The stubborn insistence that what's ours stays ours. On quiet evenings, I sit on the porch with James. We watch our daughters play in the yard, the same yard where my father taught me to catch fireflies, where my grandmother hung laundry to dry. You did it, James says sometimes. You saved this place. We all did, I correct. Every woman who refused to disappear quietly. Every person who helped document and fight and believe. The house stands. Scarred but stronger. Tested but still here. Just like me. And that's how it should be. That's how it will always be. Because we're Chapmans. We don't give up. We don't surrender what's ours. We fight. We survive. We win. And we make damn sure the next generation knows how to fight too. This house has seen births and deaths. Celebrations and tragedies. Ordinary mornings and extraordinary struggles. It will see more. My daughters will add their stories to its walls. Maybe someday their daughters will too. The legacy continues. Not because it was easy. Not because we were lucky. But because we chose to fight for it. Every single day. That's the real inheritance. Not just the house. Not just the property. But the lesson that some things are worth fighting for. That family and history and belonging matter more than convenience or compromise. Theo and Darlene tried to teach me that security is an illusion. That trust is weakness. That love is just another tool for manipulation. Instead, I learned that security is built through boundaries. That trust is earned and worth protecting. That love, real love, respects what you value and helps you defend it. The house taught me that. My grandmother's fight taught me that. My father's gift taught me that. And now I'm teaching my daughters. The porch steps creak under my feet. The same creak they've had for 100 years. I could fix it, but I don't. It's part of the house's voice. It's a reminder that we're all just temporary caretakers of this place. Our job isn't to make it perfect. Our job is to keep it standing, keep it safe, pass it forward. I've done that. Will continue doing that for as long as I'm here. And after I'm gone, my daughters will do the same, because I've taught them what matters, what's worth protecting, what it means to say, this is mine, and mean it in your bones. The sun sets over the neighborhood. Original Victorian houses line the street, each one a testament to time and survival. Some have been split into apartments. Others have been modernized beyond recognition. But this one, my grandmother's house, my father's house, my house, stands as it always has. True to itself, uncompromised. That's the victory. Not just keeping the property, but keeping the soul of it intact. I go inside, where James is helping the girls with homework. The kitchen smells like the same cookies my grandmother used to make. The evening light filters through windows that have watched generations grow and change. This is home. This is legacy. This This is what was worth fighting for, and I'd do it all again without hesitation to protect it. Some things are bigger than us. Some things matter more than our individual comfort or our desire to avoid conflict. This house is one of those things. This legacy is one of those things, and I'm honored to be its guardian, even if that meant becoming a fighter, especially because it meant becoming a fighter. The story ends where it began, with me, standing in the house my father left me, knowing what it cost to keep it, but also knowing it was worth every single battle, every confrontation, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and fear and rage. Worth it, all of it, because this house still stands, and so do I. My sister always bragged about her perfect marriage, so I forwarded her husband's dating profile to our entire family group chat. For 3 years, Delilah had made every family gathering unbearable with her constant gushing about how Brennan was the most devoted husband alive, how he brought her flowers every Friday, how he never looked at other women, how their love was so pure that other couples felt jealous just watching them. Meanwhile, I was getting divorced from my cheating ex-husband while she smirked and offered unsolicited advice. Maybe if you'd put more effort into your appearance, she'd say, examining her perfect manicure. Brennan says he fell in love with how I always look put together. Last month, I downloaded a dating app just to dip my toes back into the world of romance. I was swiping through profiles when a familiar face appeared. Brennan, age 34, looking for discreet fun with adventurous women. His bio read, married but wife doesn't understand my needs, looking for someone who can keep secrets. My stomach dropped. Then it filled with rage. The photos were recent. I recognized the shirt Delilah had bought him for Christmas. In one picture, he was shirtless in what looked like a hotel bathroom. Another showed him holding a drink at the bar where my family celebrated birthdays. I screenshotted everything. That Sunday, during our usual family dinner, Delilah launched into her routine performance about how blessed she was to have such a faithful husband, how marriage was so easy when you found your soulmate. Some women just don't know how to keep their men happy, she said, shooting a pointed look at me. I smiled and pulled out my phone. Speaking of keeping men happy, I said, I thought everyone should see how devoted Brennan really is. I forwarded the screenshots to our family group chat. Mom, dad, uncle, 3 cousins, and both grandparents. The reactions were immediate. Phones started buzzing around the dinner table like angry wasps. Delilah's face went white as she opened the messages. Her perfect composure cracked as she stared at her husband's shirtless selfies and his plea for discreet fun. This isn't real, she whispered. Someone's catfishing with his photos. But Uncle had already pulled up the active profile on his own phone. Says he was online 2 hours ago, he announced. Brennan chose that exact moment to walk in from the bathroom, completely oblivious to the digital wildfire consuming our family chat. What's everyone looking at? He asked cheerfully. Delilah held up her phone, showing him his own dating profile. The silence was deafening. Brennan's face cycled through confusion, panic, and finally resignation. He didn't even try to deny it. Delilah, I can explain. Don't, she cut him off, her voice deadly quiet. She stood up slowly, grabbed her purse, and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned back to him. By the way, those work trips to Seattle? I know about Miranda, and Ashley, and the girl from your gym. My jaw dropped. She'd known? Delilah smiled, but it wasn't the smug smile I was used to. This one was ice cold. I've been collecting evidence for 6 months. My divorce attorney says I'll get everything. As she walked out, her phone buzzed with a new message. I caught a glimpse of the sender's name, Private Detective Investigations. The front door slammed, leaving us all sitting in stunned silence around Mom's dining table. Brennan stood frozen in the doorway, his face cycling through what looked like the 5 stages of grief in fast forward. 6 months? He finally whispered. Dad set down his fork with deliberate precision. You might want to call a lawyer, son. Don't call him son, Mom snapped. He's not our family anymore. I watched Brennan's world collapse in real time. His phone started ringing, probably Delilah calling to twist the knife deeper. He fumbled for it, hands shaking. Delilah, please, we can work this out. Even from across the room, I could hear her laugh. It was sharp, almost musical. Work what out exactly? Your 3 affairs, your dating profile, or the fact that you've been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms? Brennan's face went gray. You know about the credit card? I know about everything, Brennan. Everything. The line went dead. Our cousin Rosalie, who'd been quietly documenting the whole scene on her phone, finally spoke up. This is better than reality TV. Put the phone away, Grandma scolded. But even she looked fascinated by the drama unfolding. Brennan slumped into the nearest chair, head in his hands. I need to go home. I need to explain. I wouldn't, Uncle said, refilling his wine glass. If she's been planning this for 6 months, your house has probably already changed locks and your stuff in garbage bags on the lawn. He wasn't wrong. 20 minutes later, Brennan's panicked call confirmed it. Not only had Delilah changed the locks, she'd also frozen their joint accounts and served him with divorce papers that were apparently hand-delivered by a very large process server who'd been waiting in the driveway. She timed this perfectly, Dad observed with grudging admiration. Sunday evening, banks closed until tomorrow. Most lawyers' offices shut down for the weekend. I pulled up Delilah's Instagram while Brennan made increasingly desperate phone calls to friends, begging for a place to crash. Her latest post was a photo of a glass of champagne with the caption, "To new beginnings and second chances. Sometimes the trash takes itself out." The comments were already pouring in from her friends, all wondering what had happened to her perfect marriage. By Monday morning, the story had spread through our entire extended family network. Delilah had masterfully controlled the narrative, sharing selected evidence with key family members who she knew would spread the gossip like wildfire. I got a text from my cousin Vera. Holy shit, did you see what Delilah posted about Brennan? Screenshots of his dating messages with 3 different women. One of them is married to his coworker. Then another from cousin Raymond. Brennan's been staying at a motel. My buddy works there. Says he's been crying in the parking lot for 2 hours. But it was the call from Mom that really drove home how thoroughly Delilah had orchestrated Brennan's downfall. Your sister's attorney called me this morning, Mom said, her voice tight with barely contained glee. They want me to testify about conversations I overheard between you and Brennan at family gatherings. What conversations? Remember last Christmas when he was bragging about how easy it was to travel for work? How he had this whole system for booking hotels under fake names for client meetings? I remembered. At the time, it seemed like typical business traveler stuff. Now it felt like a confession. Delilah's attorney says it helps establish a pattern of deceptive behavior. My sister had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. The real masterstroke came Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when my phone exploded with notifications from our family group chat. Delilah had posted a video message. She sat in what looked like a coffee shop, perfectly composed, hairstyled, makeup flawless. She looked nothing like a woman whose marriage had just imploded. Hi, everyone, she said, smiling serenely. I wanted to address the elephant in the room and set the record straight about what happened on Sunday. She explained how she'd discovered Brennan's first affair 8 months ago, how instead of confronting him, she'd hired a private investigator to document everything. I know some of you might think I should have said something sooner, she continued, but I needed to protect myself legally and financially. Brennan had been systematically hiding assets and planning to leave me anyway. His dating profile wasn't just about cheating, it was part of a larger plan to abandon our marriage while keeping all our money. The video revealed bank statements showing Brennan had been secretly transferring funds to offshore accounts. Photos of property deeds he'd tried to put solely in his name. Screenshots of emails between Brennan and his divorce attorney from 3 months ago, discussing how to minimize financial exposure in a potential divorce. So, when my sister found his dating profile and shared it with all of you, Delilah said, looking directly into the camera, she actually saved me from a much worse situation. Brennan thought he was playing me. Instead, he played himself. The comments on the video were vicious. Family members who'd previously fawned over Brennan were now calling him every name in the book. His own mother had even commented, "I raised you better than this." But Delilah wasn't done. Wednesday brought the nuclear option. She'd somehow obtained security footage from the hotel where Brennan had been meeting his affairs. Not just any hotel. The same one where our cousin's wedding reception had been held last year. The same hotel where Brennan had given a speech about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of fidelity. The footage showed him checking in with 3 different women over the past 6 months. One of them was clearly recognizable as Ashley, the receptionist from his office who'd attended multiple family barbecues with her husband and kids. Delilah posted the footage to a private Facebook group that included not just our family, but also Brennan's coworkers, college friends, and basically everyone who'd ever known him. The social destruction was swift and complete. By Thursday, Brennan had been fired from his job. Ashley's husband had filed for divorce and was threatening to sue Brennan for alienation of affection. Miranda, the Seattle affair, had apparently sent screenshots of their conversations to her own husband, who happened to be Brennan's biggest client. Brennan called me, desperate and sobbing. "You have to help me," he begged. "Your sister is destroying my entire life." "She's not destroying your life," I said calmly. "She's revealing the life you were already living. But the whole family hates me now. I can't show my face anywhere. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on your wife and steal her money." "I wasn't stealing. Brennan, she has bank records. You moved $40,000 to an offshore account last month." "Silence, please," he whispered. "I know we were never close, but can't you talk to her? Get her to stop this?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "You want to know something funny?" I said. 3 years ago, when I was going through my divorce, Delilah told me that women who can't keep their husbands happy deserve what they get. She said I should have seen the signs earlier, should have fought harder. I remember that conversation. "Do you remember what you said?" He was quiet. "You said that smart women always have a backup plan, that they never get caught off guard." I let that sink in. "Congratulations, Brennan. You just learned what it looks like when a smart woman has a backup plan." I hung up. Friday brought the piece de resistance. Delilah had scheduled what she called a truth and reconciliation dinner at the same restaurant where Brennan had proposed to her 5 years earlier. She'd invited our entire extended family, plus several of Brennan's relatives who'd sided with her after seeing the evidence. I arrived to find her holding court at a large table, looking radiant in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She stood up when she saw me. "There she is," she announced. "The sister who saved my life." Everyone applauded. I sat down, confused. "I'm not sure I deserve credit for—" "Don't be modest," Delilah interrupted. "If you hadn't found his dating profile, I might never have had the evidence I needed to catch him in the act." She raised her champagne glass. "To family members who have your back, even when they don't know they're having it." As everyone toasted, she leaned over and whispered in my ear. "I've been monitoring his phone for months. I knew exactly when and where he'd be on dating apps. I just needed someone else to discover it so I'd look like the victim instead of the vengeful wife." My blood ran cold. She sat back, smiling that perfect smile. "You played your part beautifully." I stared at her, realizing I'd been as manipulated as everyone else. The dating app hadn't been a coincidence. She'd somehow known I'd downloaded it, known I'd find his profile, known I'd screenshot it and share it with the family. "How long have you been planning this?" I whispered. "Since the day I married him," she said quietly, so only I could hear. "Did you really think I'd marry a man without investigating him first? I knew about his cheating tendencies before our wedding. I just needed time to position myself legally and financially." "Why tell me this?" She sipped her champagne. "Because you deserve to know that your divorce wasn't your fault. Your ex-husband was a cheater and a liar, just like Brennan. The difference is I was prepared. You weren't." I felt sick. I never loved Brennan, she continued conversationally. I married him because he had money and connections, but I also knew he'd eventually cheat, and when he did, I'd be ready to take everything. Around us, our family was celebrating Delilah's escape from her terrible marriage. They had no idea they were actually celebrating a calculated heist that had been years in the making. The private investigator? I asked. Been on my payroll since month 2 of our marriage. Every affair, every lie, every financial move, all documented. The offshore accounts? I helped him set them up, convinced him it was smart tax planning. Of course, I kept copies of all the paperwork. I pushed back from the table. You're a sociopath. She laughed, the same musical laugh I'd heard her use on Brennan over the phone. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my wrist. Where are you going? The party's just getting started. I can't be part of this. You already are part of this. You were part of it the moment you sent those screenshots to the family chat. She was right. I'd been her unwitting accomplice. Don't look so upset, she said, releasing my wrist. You got your revenge on me, didn't you? All those years I made you feel bad about your failed marriage, and now you know I was just as miserable as you were. We're even. This isn't even. This is insane. This is justice. Brennan deserved everything that happened to him. I couldn't argue with that. Brennan had been a cheater and a thief, but Delilah's coldly calculated revenge felt like something else entirely. What happens now? I asked. She smiled. Now I take my settlement money and disappear. I'm thinking Italy, maybe Greece, somewhere warm where 40-year-old divorcees can start over. And Brennan will rebuild his life, sadder but wiser, or he won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. As I left the restaurant, I felt like I was walking away from a crime scene. Technically, no laws had been broken. Delilah had simply been smarter and more prepared than her cheating husband. But the methodical way she'd destroyed him, the years of planning, the careful manipulation of evidence and witnesses, felt like something darker than justice. 2 weeks later, Delilah was gone. She'd liquidated everything, the house, the cars, their shared investments, and disappeared overnight. She left a note for the family explaining that she needed space to heal from the trauma of her marriage. Brennan, meanwhile, had been reduced to living in a studio apartment and working at a car dealership. His attempts to contest the divorce had failed spectacularly when more evidence of his financial impropriety came to light. I found myself in an odd position. Our family treated me like a hero for exposing Brennan's cheating, but I knew the truth. I'd been played as thoroughly as everyone else. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I'd resented Delilah's perfect marriage, her smug superiority, her condescending advice about my failed relationship. Now I knew she'd been living a lie even bigger than mine. But unlike my ex-husband who'd cheated impulsively and stupidly, Delilah had turned deception into an art form. She'd spent 5 years married to a man she didn't love, playing the perfect wife while systematically preparing to destroy him. I wasn't sure which was worse, being the cheater or being the person who married a cheater specifically to ruin them. 6 months after the dinner debacle, I got a postcard from Santorini. No return address, just a photo of a sunset over white buildings and blue water. On the back, in Delilah's perfect handwriting, "Thanks for playing your part. The new life is everything I hoped it would be." I threw the postcard in the garbage, but I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in Greece, my sister was living exactly the life she'd always wanted. And the most disturbing part was that she'd gotten it by being exactly who she'd always been: beautiful, calculating, and utterly ruthless. A year later, I ran into Brennan at a grocery store. He looked older, worn down by everything that had happened. When he saw me, he actually smiled. "How are you holding up?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Better than I expected," he said. "Therapy helps. Turns out I had a lot of issues to work through." "Are you angry at her?" He considered the question. I was. But honestly, she was right about one thing. I was planning to leave her and take as much money as I could. The difference is she was better at it than I was. "Do you regret marrying her?" "I regret marrying her for the wrong reasons. I regret cheating. I regret trying to steal from her." He paused. "But I don't regret finding out who she really was before she could do worse damage." As he walked away, I realized he might be the only person who truly understood what had happened. Delilah hadn't just been getting revenge, she'd been showing him exactly who they both were. Two predators who'd circled each other for 5 years, each thinking they were hunting the other, until one of them finally made their move. The only difference was that she'd been patient enough to let him destroy himself first. I still get postcards sometimes, never from the same place twice. Mykonos, Tuscany, Barcelona, always the same message. Brief thanks for my role in her liberation. I never write back. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I'd never downloaded that dating app, if I'd never found Brennan's profile, if I'd never sent those screenshots to the family chat. Would Delilah have found another way to spring her trap? Or would she still be playing the perfect wife, waiting for the right moment to strike? I suspect she would have found a way. People like my sister always do. The scariest part isn't that she manipulated all of us. It's that she did it so well that even now, knowing the truth, part of me still admires her for it. She'd taken everything from a man who'd tried to take everything from her. She'd done it legally, methodically, and with surgical precision, and she'd used his own family to help her do it. Maybe that's why the postcards bother me so much. They're not just thank you notes. They're reminders that I helped her become exactly who she wanted to be. The question I can't answer is, what does that make me? 3 years have passed since the great family dinner disaster, and life has settled into a new normal. Mom still brings up the Brennan situation at every gathering, usually when she's had too much wine. Dad just shakes his head and mutters about women these days having too many secrets. Our uncle started a conspiracy theory that Delilah is working for the FBI now, using her skills to take down white-collar criminals. Cousin Rosalie insists she spotted her in a travel magazine, posing on a yacht in the Mediterranean with some European businessman. I've stopped trying to correct their romanticized versions of events. The truth is messier than their theories. Delilah wasn't a secret agent or an international woman of mystery. She was just someone who'd learned early that the world could be cruel to women who weren't careful. I think about that sometimes when I'm lying in bed staring at the ceiling. How many women are out there right now playing roles they hate, collecting evidence, preparing for wars their husbands don't even know they're fighting? How many perfect marriages are actually elaborate long-term cons? The postcard stopped coming last year. The final one was from a small town in Portugal, with a picture of a farmer's market. The message was different this time. Started teaching English to local kids. Some games are worth winning. Others are worth walking away from. I chose both. I'd like to think that means she found some kind of peace. That maybe she's discovered how to be happy without destroying someone else first. But I'm not naive enough to believe it. Last month, I got engaged to a man named Theodore who teaches high school history and coaches Little League on weekends. He's kind, honest, and so transparent about his feelings that sometimes it's almost uncomfortable. When I told him the story about Delilah and Brennan, he was quiet for a long time. "Do you think she really loved him?" he finally asked. "I don't think she's capable of loving anyone." "That's sad." "Is it? She got everything she wanted." He considered this. Did she, though? She spent 5 years of her life married to someone she despised, living in a house that felt like a prison, pretending to be happy every single day. That sounds like its own kind of hell. I'd never thought about it that way. Maybe the real tragedy, Theodore continued, is that she was so convinced she had to manipulate everyone that she never gave anyone the chance to actually love her. Someone did love her. Brennan might have been a cheater, but in the beginning, he really thought she was perfect. But she never let him see who she really was. So he fell in love with a performance, not a person. Theodore's right, of course. Delilah had been so busy playing chess that she'd forgotten there was another way to live. But I can't shake the feeling that she'd tried the other way once and it hadn't worked out. After all, someone had taught her to be so calculating. Someone had shown her that love without leverage was just weakness waiting to be exploited. Maybe her first marriage had been real. Maybe she'd been trusting and open and genuinely in love. And maybe someone had destroyed her for it. Maybe Brennan wasn't her first victim. Maybe he was her revenge against whoever had made her this way in the first place. Or maybe I'm overthinking it because I can't accept that my sister is exactly what she appears to be, a woman who sees relationships as transactions and people as tools to be used. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. She's gone. Brennan's rebuilding his life, and I'm planning a wedding to a man who thinks manipulation is what you do to pie crust, not people. But sometimes I still catch myself wondering, if Theodore ever cheated on me, if he ever tried to steal from me or abandon me, would I have learned enough from watching Delilah to protect myself? Would I be smart enough to be patient? Calculating enough to collect evidence? Cold enough to destroy someone who'd tried to destroy me? The honest answer scares me, because part of me, the part that spent 3 years listening to Delilah's condescending advice about my failed marriage, the part that felt humiliated and small and stupid for not seeing my ex-husband's cheating coming, that part of me thinks my sister was brilliant. She saw a threat and she neutralized it completely. She turned the tables on a man who thought he was smarter than her. She walked away with everything while he lost everything. And she did it all while making everyone else think she was the victim. If that's not genius, it's at least a masterclass in strategy. The question that keeps me awake at night isn't whether what she did was right or wrong. The question is whether I'm strong enough to be that strategic if I ever need to be, or whether I'm naive enough to believe I'll never need to be. Theodore would probably say that's the wrong question entirely. That the goal isn't to be prepared for war, it's to choose partners who aren't looking for a fight. He'd probably say that real love means trusting someone enough to be vulnerable with them, even knowing they could hurt you. He'd probably say that Delilah's problem wasn't that she was too trusting, it was that she was so afraid of being hurt that she chose to hurt first. And he'd probably be right about all of that. But he's never been married to someone who spent 2 years systematically draining their bank account while pretending to plan a future together. He's never sat across from a divorce attorney listening to evidence of betrayals so elaborate they might as well have been military campaigns. He's never had to rebuild his entire sense of self after discovering that everything he thought he knew about his marriage was a lie. I have. So while I love Theodore's optimism, while I appreciate his faith in human nature, while I want to believe that choosing good people means never having to prepare for them to turn bad, I also know how quickly good people can become strangers. I know how fast love can turn into leverage, and I know that women who don't prepare for betrayal are women who get destroyed by it. Maybe that makes me more like Delilah than I want to admit. Maybe that's why her postcards felt less like gloating and more like recognition, one survivor acknowledging another. Maybe that's why I never threw them away, even after I told myself I had. They're still in my jewelry box, tucked behind the engagement ring Theodore gave me. Hidden, but not forgotten. Insurance policies written in my sister's perfect handwriting. Reminders that love is wonderful, but documentation is forever. Just in case I ever need to remember which one matters more. The morning of my engagement party, I found myself standing in front of my bathroom mirror, holding one of Delilah's postcards, the one from Portugal, with her message about walking away from some game. For the first time, I wondered if she'd been trying to tell me something, not about revenge or manipulation or the art of destroying your enemies, about knowing when to stop playing altogether, about finding the courage to want something real, even if it means giving up the safety of emotional distance, about choosing trust over strategy, even when strategy has never let you down. I put the postcard back in the jewelry box and closed the lid. Maybe that's the real difference between me and Delilah. She learned how to win every game she played, but I'm still learning how to stop playing games entirely. Whether that makes me braver or more foolish than her remains to be seen. But for the first time in years, I'm willing to find out. The engagement party was perfect. Theodore's family welcomed me like I'd always been part of their clan. My family told embarrassing stories about my childhood and pretended that the Delilah situation had never happened. Everyone laughed and danced and made toasts about true love conquering all. It was exactly the kind of celebration Delilah would have orchestrated flawlessly. Except this time, the happiness was real. At midnight, as Theodore and I cleaned up champagne glasses and crumpled napkins, he asked me the question I'd been dreading. Are you going to invite her to the wedding? I'd been avoiding this decision for months. I don't know where she is. You could find her if you wanted to. He was right. Delilah was smart, but she wasn't a ghost. If I hired the right private investigator, tracked down her financial accounts, followed the paper trail she'd inevitably left behind, I could probably locate her within a month. Do you want me to find her? I asked. Theodore considered this carefully. He always considered everything carefully, which was one of the reasons I loved him. I want you to do whatever feels right to you, he finally said. But I also want you to think about why you're making that choice. What do you mean? Are you not inviting her because you don't want her there? Or because you're afraid of what she might do if she comes? I started to answer, then stopped. The truth was complicated. Part of me missed my sister. Not the calculating manipulator who'd orchestrated Brennan's downfall, but the girl who'd taught me how to braid friendship bracelets when we were kids. The teenager who'd stayed up all night helping me study for chemistry tests. The young woman who'd held my hand during Dad's cancer scare, before marriages and divorces and betrayals had turned us into strangers. But another part of me was terrified of her. Not because I thought she'd ruin my wedding. She was too smart for such obvious sabotage. Because I was afraid she'd look at Theodore and see weaknesses I hadn't noticed, vulnerabilities that could be exploited, cracks in our foundation that I'd been too happy to examine. I was afraid she'd ask questions I didn't want to answer, like, have you checked his financial accounts lately? Or, are you sure he's not just marrying you for your inheritance from Grandpa? Or, what's your exit strategy if this doesn't work out? Questions that would poison every conversation, every gesture, every moment of trust we'd built together. I said slowly, I'm afraid she'll make me paranoid. Theodore nodded like he'd expected this answer. Do you trust me? He asked. Yes. Do you trust yourself? I think so. Then why would it matter what she thinks? Because she'd been right about Brennan, I wanted to say. Because her instincts about people were sharper than mine. Because she'd seen through everyone's lies while I'd been blindly trusting. But I also knew that wasn't the whole truth. The real reason I was afraid of Delilah wasn't that she might expose Theodore's flaws. It was that she might expose mine. She might look at our relationship and see all the ways I was still protecting myself, all the emotional walls I hadn't torn down yet, all the strategies I was still using, even with someone I claimed to love completely. She might recognize that I was still playing games, even if I'd convinced myself I'd stopped. You're overthinking this, Theodore said gently. Probably. Want to know what I think? I nodded. I think you should invite her. Not because you have to, but because you want to find out what happens when you choose trust over fear. What if she ruins everything? Then we'll deal with it together. But what if she doesn't? What if seeing you genuinely happy is exactly what she needs to remember who she used to be? Theodore's optimism was both endearing and naive. He couldn't imagine someone like Delilah because he'd never had to protect himself from anyone who shared his DNA. But maybe that was exactly why I'd fallen in love with him. He made me want to be the kind of person who gave people second chances, who chose vulnerability over self-preservation, who believed that happy endings were possible, even for families as messy as mine. Okay, I said. I'll find her. It took 3 weeks and a private investigator named Raymond who specialized in tracking down missing persons. Delilah had covered her tracks well, but she hadn't anticipated that I'd hire someone as thorough as she was. She was living in a small coastal town in Portugal, just like the postcard had suggested, teaching English at a local school, renting a cottage that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and apparently dating a widowed fisherman named Miguel who had 2 teenage daughters. According to Raymond's report, she'd been using her real name for everything. Bank accounts, rental agreements, work permits. No fake identities, no elaborate cover stories. Just Delilah, living what appeared to be a remarkably normal life. Either she'd genuinely changed, or she'd gotten so confident in her abilities that she didn't bother hiding anymore. I decided to call, rather than send a letter. If she hung up on me, at least I'd know where we stood. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice sounded different. Softer, maybe. Less practiced. It's me, I said. Silence. Then, how did you find me? Does it matter? I suppose not. How are you? I'm getting married. Congratulations. Is he decent? The question caught me off guard. Not because it was invasive, but because it sounded genuinely concerned. He's wonderful. Good. You deserve wonderful. I'd expected sarcasm or manipulation or some elaborate test. Instead, she sounded like she meant it. I want to invite you to the wedding. Another silence. Longer this time. That's probably not a good idea. Why? Because I'm not the same person I was when I left. And you're not the same person either. We might not know how to be sisters anymore. Maybe we could learn. She laughed, but it wasn't the sharp musical sound I remembered. This laugh was warmer, more genuine. You sound happy. I am happy. Then why do you need me at your wedding? It was a fair question. One I'd been avoiding asking myself. Because you're my sister. Because I miss you. Because I want to find out if we can be family again. And if we can't, then at least we'll know we tried. I heard voices in the background. Children laughing. Someone speaking Portuguese. The sounds of a life that had nothing to do with revenge or manipulation or elaborate long-term cons. I'll think about it, she said finally. The wedding's in 3 months. June 15th. I know when it is. I may have disappeared, but I still follow the family social media. Of course she did. Delilah had always been thorough. Will you let me know either way? Yes. We hung up without saying goodbye, but somehow it didn't feel like an ending. 2 months later, I got a text message. I'll be there. Looking forward to meeting Theodore. No apologies for the past, no promises about the future, just a simple acceptance of my invitation. I showed the message to Theodore, who smiled like he'd never doubted she'd come. "Are you nervous?" he asked, terrified. "Good. That means it matters to you." The morning of the wedding, I woke up before dawn and found myself standing in my childhood bedroom, looking through old photo albums. Pictures of me and Delilah as kids, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings, family vacations where we'd been inseparable. In every photo, we were touching somehow. Arms around each other's shoulders, hands clasped together, leaning against each other like we were two parts of the same person. When had we stopped touching? When had we started keeping secrets? I couldn't remember exactly when the change had happened, but I could see it in the later photos. The increasing distance between us, the careful positioning that kept us in the same frame but never quite connected. By the time we were adults, we looked like strangers who happened to share a last name. "You ready for this?" Mom asked, appearing in the doorway with my wedding dress. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Your sister's here." My heart skipped. "How does she look?" "Different. Older, maybe. Or just calmer." I spent the next 2 hours getting ready, wondering what I'd say to Delilah when I saw her, whether we'd hug or shake hands or just nod politely like acquaintances, whether she'd look at Theodore and see threats I'd missed, whether I'd look at her and remember all the reasons I'd learned not to trust her. But when I walked into the bridal suite and saw her standing by the window, wearing a simple blue dress and minimal makeup, all my prepared speeches disappeared. She turned when she heard me enter, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Then she smiled. Not the perfect, calculated smile I remembered, but something softer and more uncertain. "You look beautiful," she said. "So do you." And she did. Not in the polished, untouchable way she'd cultivated during her marriage to Brennan. This version of Delilah looked approachable, human, like someone I might actually want to have a conversation with. "I brought you something," she said, reaching into her purse. I tensed, old habits making me suspicious of any gift from her. She pulled out a small wrapped box and handed it to me. Inside was a bracelet made of braided threads in blue and gold, the colors I'd chosen for my wedding. It was clearly handmade, the kind of friendship bracelet we used to make as kids. "I know it's not very sophisticated," she said, "but I thought, maybe you'd like something from the person I used to be, before everything got so complicated." I fastened it around my wrist, next to the expensive jewelry Theodore's mother had given me. "It's perfect." We stood there for another moment, neither of us sure what came next. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "For which part?" "All of it. Using you to expose Brennan, making you feel bad about your divorce, being the kind of sister you couldn't trust with your happiness." I'd imagined this conversation dozens of times, but I'd never expected it to feel so anticlimactic. "I understand why you did it," I said. "Understanding doesn't make it right." "No, but it makes it forgivable." She looked surprised. "Just like that?" "Just like that." Because the truth was, I was tired of carrying resentment around like armor. I was tired of analyzing everyone's motives and preparing for betrayal and living like love was a war waiting to happen. I wanted to be the kind of person who could forgive her sister and mean it, who could choose hope over cynicism, even when cynicism had kept me safer. "I met someone," Delilah said suddenly. "Miguel." Her eyes widened. "You know about Miguel?" "I hired a private investigator to find you. His report was very thorough." She laughed. "Of course you did. I'm impressed. I learned from the best." "Miguel's nothing like Brennan," she continued. "He's not rich or connected or ambitious. He's just kind. His daughters are teaching me Portuguese and I'm helping them with their English homework. It's the most normal thing I've ever done." "Do you love him?" She considered the question seriously. "I don't know yet, but I like who I am when I'm with him. I like the person his daughters think I am. I like waking up without having to remember which role I'm playing that day." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. "That sounds like love to me." "Maybe it is. I'm still learning how to tell the difference." The wedding coordinator appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Ladies, we're ready for you." Delilah squeezed my hand. "Are you nervous?" "No," I realized. "I'm not." And I wasn't. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, I was walking into something important without a backup plan, without an exit strategy, without documentation or evidence or insurance policies hidden in jewelry boxes. I was choosing to trust completely, knowing I could be hurt, and deciding that the possibility of happiness was worth the risk. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. The ceremony was beautiful. Theodore's vows made half the guests cry, including his father, who'd insisted he was too tough for tears. My vows were shorter but no less heartfelt, a promise to choose love over fear, honesty over strategy, and partnership over self-protection. When the officiant pronounced us married and Theodore kissed me, I felt something inside me settle. A knot of tension I'd carried for years finally loosened. During the reception, I watched Delilah charm Theodore's family with stories from our childhood, carefully edited versions that highlighted our bond rather than our conflicts. She danced with our father, listened patiently to our grandmother's complaints about modern music, and helped my teenage cousin with her algebra homework. She was, in other words, the sister I remembered from before everything went wrong. Late in the evening, she found me on the terrace, taking a break from the celebration. "Thank you for inviting me," she said. "Thank you for coming. He's good for you, Theodore. I can see it in the way you carry yourself." "What do you mean?" "You used to hold yourself like you were expecting a blow, like you were always braced for impact. Tonight, you look open, unguarded." "Is that bad?" "It's terrifying," she said with a smile. "And it's exactly how people look when they're genuinely happy." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars reflect off the lake where Theodore and I had gotten engaged. "I have something to tell you," Delilah said, "about the postcards." "What about them?" "They weren't thank you notes. They were apologies. I just didn't know how to say sorry directly. For using me, For making you think that manipulation was strength. For teaching you to be suspicious of everyone who claimed to love you. For making you believe that protecting yourself was more important than trusting other people. She turned to look at me directly. You were right to invite me tonight. Not because I deserved it, but because choosing forgiveness over resentment is exactly the kind of person you should be. What kind of person is that? The kind who gets to be genuinely happy. The kind who doesn't have to play games because she's brave enough to want real things. Inside, the band started playing our last dance song. Theodore appeared in the doorway, looking for me. Go, Delilah said. Dance with your husband. Husband. The word sounded impossibly perfect. As I walked toward Theodore, I felt Delilah watching me. But instead of the calculating gaze I remembered, this felt protective, supportive, like a sister who actually wanted me to be happy. 3 months later, I got one final postcard. This time from Portugal, with a picture of a fishing boat at sunset. The message was brief. Told Miguel everything. He said my past doesn't scare him. It just makes him appreciate who I am now. Thank you for showing me it was possible to stop running from myself. Your sister, Delilah. I showed it to Theodore, who read it twice before smiling. Think she'll stay this time? I think she's figured out that running was never really about geography. What was it about? Running from the possibility that someone might love her exactly as she is, without strategies or games or perfect performances. And now she's learning what you taught me, that love isn't a war you have to win. It's a choice you make every day. Theodore kissed my forehead. Smart woman, your sister, the smartest. It just took her a while to figure out what was worth being smart about. I put the postcard in our kitchen drawer, next to takeout menus and grocery lists and all the other detritus of normal, boring, beautifully ordinary married life. For the first time in our relationship, a message from Delilah felt like a gift instead of a test. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not the absence of complicated history, but the presence of people who choose to write better endings. 6 years have passed since my wedding day. Theodore and I have a 3-year-old daughter named Iris who inherited her aunt's strategic mind, but uses it primarily to negotiate extra bedtime stories and convince us that ice cream counts as a vegetable if it has strawberries in it. Delilah lives in Portugal with Miguel and his daughters, who call her Tia Delilah, and apparently consider her the coolest adult in their lives. She sends Iris birthday cards with elaborate hand-drawn pictures of Portuguese castles and fishing boats, and Skype calls on Sunday evenings where she teaches our daughter basic Portuguese phrases that she then uses to confuse her preschool teachers. Last summer, we visited them for 2 weeks. I was nervous. It was the longest time Delilah and I had spent together since we were teenagers, but watching her with Iris was like seeing her childhood self again, patient, playful, completely present. She taught my daughter to build sandcastles and catch minnows in tide pools and recognize different types of seabirds. On our last night there, after Iris was asleep, the 4 of us sat on Miguel's porch drinking wine and watching the sunset. I have a confession, Delilah said suddenly. My stomach tightened. Old habits. What kind of confession? I've been thinking about moving back to the States. Theodore and I exchanged glances. Why? I asked carefully. Miguel's oldest daughter is starting college next year. His youngest will graduate in 3 years. And she paused, searching for words. I miss having a family. A real family. Not just the family I chose, but the one I was born into. What about Miguel? He'd come with me. His daughters could visit during summer breaks and holidays. We've talked about it. I tried to process this information. The idea of my sister living nearby again after so many years of distance felt both wonderful and terrifying. Where would you want to live? Maybe an hour from you guys. Close enough to see Iris regularly. Far enough that we're not in each other's business every day. What would you do for work? Teach, probably. I've gotten good at it. And Miguel could start a fishing charter business. There are plenty of rich people who'd pay good money to learn traditional Portuguese fishing techniques. It sounded reasonable, practical, completely normal, which somehow made it more frightening than any of her elaborate schemes had been. You don't have to decide tonight, she said, reading my expression. Just think about it, please. That night, Theodore and I lay in bed listening to the ocean waves and talking in whispers. Are you worried about her moving back? He asked. Should I be? I don't know. You know her better than I do. But did I? The Delilah I'd grown up with had been capable of both fierce loyalty and calculated betrayal. The Delilah who destroyed Brennan had been brilliant and ruthless and completely untrustworthy. This version of Delilah seemed genuinely changed. But people didn't usually transform this completely, did they? What does your gut tell you? Theodore asked. That she's different. That the life she's built here has made her into someone I could actually be friends with. But I'm scared that I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's really there. Theodore was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared that if she moves back, you'll find out whether you've really changed as much as you think you have. He was right, as usual. The version of myself that I'd become. The trusting wife, the relaxed mother, the woman who chose love over strategy. She'd been built in safe spaces. With Theodore, who was incapable of deception. With friends who wore their hearts on their sleeves. With a daughter too young for complicated motivations. I'd never tested this new version of myself against someone who could see through it. Someone who'd taught me to be suspicious in the first place. I want to believe I've changed, I said. Then maybe it's time to find out. The next morning, I found Delilah sitting on the beach, watching the sunrise. I sat beside her without speaking. You're thinking about my proposal, she said. How do you know? You get the same expression when you're trying to decide whether to trust someone. You've had it since you were little. And what expression is that? Like you're doing complicated math in your head, weighing risks against benefits. She wasn't wrong. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Are you really as changed as you seem? Or are you just better at hiding your calculations now? She smiled, but it wasn't defensive. If anything, she looked relieved by the question. Both, probably. I still notice things other people miss. I still think strategically about relationships and outcomes. But now I use those skills to protect the people I love instead of protecting myself from them. What's the difference? The difference is that I'm not looking for ways to hurt people anymore. I'm looking for ways to help them. She picked up a shell and turned it over in her hands. When Miguel's youngest daughter was being bullied at school, I didn't encourage her to fight back or get revenge. I helped her figure out how to make the bullies irrelevant by building stronger friendships with other kids. And that worked better than any of my old methods would have. Because instead of creating enemies, we created allies. I could see the logic in that approach. It was still strategic thinking, but pointed in a completely different direction. Do you miss it? I asked. The old way of doing things? Sometimes. There was a certain satisfaction in outmaneuvering people who underestimated me. But this is better. How do you know? Because I sleep through the night now. Because I don't have to remember which version of myself I'm supposed to be with different people. Because I can let people surprise me without assuming they're trying to manipulate me. She looked at me directly. And because I have people in my life who love me for who I actually am, not for the performance I put on for them. It was the most vulnerable thing she'd ever said to me. Okay, I said. Okay, what? Okay, you can move back. We'll figure it out as we go. Her face lit up with genuine joy. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. No games, no manipulation, no strategic maneuvering. If you have a problem with me or Theodore or anyone in our family, you talk to us directly. Agreed. And if I ever get that feeling that you're not being honest with me, I'm going to call you on it immediately. No more wondering if I'm being paranoid. I would expect nothing less. And you have to promise me that if you ever feel yourself slipping back into old patterns, you'll tell me. Or tell Miguel. Or tell someone who can help you stop before you hurt people. She nodded seriously. I promise. All of it. We shook hands, and then, for the first time in probably 15 years, we hugged. It felt like coming home. Delilah and Miguel moved to a small town about an hour from us 8 months later. True to her word, she got a job teaching ESL at the local community college, while Miguel started a fishing charter business that became surprisingly popular with weekend warriors from the city. They bought a small house with a guest room for his daughters, and a garden where Delilah grows vegetables and herbs that she brings to our family dinners every Sunday. The transition wasn't seamless. There were moments when I caught glimpses of her old calculating self, the way she assessed new people, the strategic way she approached social situations, the careful attention she paid to power dynamics in group settings. But Theodore was right. Instead of using those skills to exploit weaknesses, she used them to help people feel included and valued. When my friend Carolyn was going through a difficult divorce, Delilah didn't offer to destroy her ex-husband. Instead, she connected Carolyn with a support group and helped her find a therapist who specialized in rebuilding self-esteem after emotional abuse. When our neighbor's teenage son was struggling with depression, Delilah didn't try to fix him herself. She researched local mental health resources and shared them with his parents in a way that felt supportive rather than intrusive. She was still strategic, she was still observant, she was still capable of seeing patterns other people missed, but now she was using those abilities to build people up instead of tear them down. Iris adored her from the moment she arrived. Within a week of Delilah's move, my daughter had decided that Aunt Delilah was the most interesting person in the world. Delilah taught her card games and origami and basic Portuguese, and listened with genuine fascination to Iris's elaborate theories about why unicorns were probably real, but just very good at hiding. She's different with children than I expected, Theodore observed one evening after Delilah had spent the afternoon building an elaborate fort in our living room with Iris. Different how? Patient, present. Like she has all the time in the world. He was right. With adults, Delilah was still somewhat guarded, still calculating the right thing to say or do. But with Iris, she was completely natural. Maybe that's because children are terrible at manipulation, so there was nothing for her to defend against. Or maybe it's because children love unconditionally, so there was nothing for her to earn or prove. Either way, watching them together made me realize that the part of Delilah that had been capable of love and trust and genuine connection had never actually disappeared. It had just gone underground, waiting for a safe space to resurface. 2 years after her return, Delilah called me with news that surprised no one but her. Miguel proposed, she said, her voice full of wonder. And? I said yes. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. I'm terrified, she admitted. Why? Because I've never been married to someone I actually love. I don't know how to do it right. Nobody knows how to do it right, I assured her. You just show up every day and try your best. What if my best isn't good enough? Then you try again tomorrow. That's what marriage is, a series of second chances. She was quiet for a moment. Will you be my maid of honor? I started crying before I could answer. Yes, I finally managed. Of course I will. The wedding was small and perfect. Miguel's daughters served as bridesmaids, wearing dresses that Delilah had taught them to sew themselves. Iris was the flower girl, taking her job so seriously that she counted each petal as she scattered them down the aisle. Delilah wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers from her garden. Miguel wore a traditional Portuguese vest that his mother had embroidered decades earlier. They exchanged vows in English and Portuguese, promising to be partners, friends, and anchors for each other. There was nothing calculated about their words, just two people making honest promises about the life they wanted to build together. During the reception, Delilah pulled me aside. I want to show you something, she said. She led me to a small table where she displayed photos from throughout her life. Childhood pictures of us together. Photos from her first wedding that looked staged and formal. Recent pictures with Miguel's family that were candid and joyful. But the centerpiece was a photo I'd never seen before. A candid shot someone had taken at my wedding, showing Delilah and me hugging while laughing about something I couldn't remember. When did you get this? I asked. Mom took it, She gave me a copy last month. I studied our faces in the photo. We both looked genuinely happy, genuinely connected. I keep it on my nightstand, Delilah said, as a reminder. Of what? That some things are worth the risk of trusting completely. 5 years later, I'm writing this story while sitting in Delilah and Miguel's backyard, watching our children play together. Iris is 8 now and has appointed herself the leader of their multi-generational, multilingual crew. Miguel's daughters, now college graduates, are home for the summer and apparently find their little American cousin endlessly entertaining. Delilah is pregnant with her first biological child, a development that has surprised everyone, including her. I never thought I wanted to be a mother, she told me when she shared the news. But then I realized I'd never wanted to bring a child into the world I was living in before. This world, with Miguel, with you guys, with his daughters, this is a world where I can imagine raising someone. She's due in December, and she's already started a nursery that looks nothing like the sterile perfection of her old house with Brennan. This room is warm and colorful, filled with handmade blankets and toys carved by Miguel's father. Are you nervous? I ask her now, watching her rub her growing belly, constantly, but not about the same things I used to worry about. What do you mean? I used to worry about protecting myself from other people's motives. Now I worry about protecting my children from my own cynicism. She looks out at the kids playing in the garden. I don't want this baby to grow up thinking that love is something you have to earn or defend against. I want them to know it's something you can simply receive. You'll figure it out, I tell her, and Miguel will help, and so will we. I know, that's the strange part. I actually believe that now. As the sun sets, Theodore emerges from the house carrying a tray of drinks. Miguel follows with a guitar, which he starts tuning while the kids beg him to play their favorite Portuguese folk songs. This is the life Delilah chose after she stopped playing games. This is the family she built after she learned to trust people. And this is the sister I got back after I decided that forgiveness was stronger than resentment. It's not the ending either of us expected when we were younger. It's not the perfect fairy tale she used to perform or the cautionary tale I used to fear. It's something better. It's real. And for the first time in my life, real feels like enough.